Township of Lyon Board of Trustees to order. It is Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023. If we could please stand for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Please let the roll call show that Treasurer Carcone is very sick, and Clerk Cash has just had knee replacement surgery, so she's going to be off in a little while. Other than that, we are all present, and we're going to move on to the approval of the consent agenda. Anyone want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda for tonight's meeting.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're going to move on to the approval of the agenda. I have no deletions, I have no additions.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're going to move on to announcements and communications. Carol, do you have one
Yes,
for
I
us?
have something for the clerk. Moving forward, we just wanted to notify everyone in the township that the public notices will now be posted in Public Notice Weekly, and it will also be available at 5 different locations within the township to pick up, as well as being posted on the website. The township has put together a January 2023 newsletter that provides all the information on that, but that's where the notices will be moving forward.
Okay. Thank you, Carol. Everyone understand that?
So not in the Herald anymore.
Nope. No more. Okay, anyone else? All right, we're going to move on to call to the public. This is where you can come up and we can talk about non-agenda related items. Please give your name and address for the record, and we do want these kept at 3 minutes, please.
My name is Ivan, and address where I live is 30817 Beechwood Street, Wixom. And so this September, I was buy from Auckland auction land inside Tanglewood. This land didn't have address, but have only parcel ID. And so I have planned to build house there, but when I came here, talked with Brian. Brian told me, so it's very long process to build house because land was not for building house. So this land is on map. It's my land, red, in red inside. Yeah, I just want to know if it's possible to do something to build house, because it's process very expensive, and if I start this process, so if you like deny, and I will lose money. So yeah, maybe I can know if it's possible to build, because I love this area, I love South Lyon, and it's very beautiful land. Yeah, it's my dream, build house inside this land. So this land before was part of a golf course, and owner was Bob. And when I know so I can build, so I message in Facebook to Bob, and then I find one manager, Bob, and talk, maybe Bob won't buy back this land because I can build and it's hard process. But Bob told me, oh, I don't need this land. Oh, it's bad land, we can take this land. So Bob don't want to buy back this land. And I talked with my neighbor, with everyone who live not far from here, and yeah, nobody needs this land. So I don't know what to do next step. So, and if I can build and I can start this process, yeah, I can do everything. I can pay all fee and everything what need to do.
Okay, well, for one thing, none of us here knows anything about this project. So the best thing I would say is they have your name, right? We have his name in the record and a phone number to get a hold of you. We can look into that and see what's going on, and then maybe give you a phone call back and let you know.
Thank you.
I mean, that's about all we can do here as a board. We really don't know much about it.
Brian, do you want to add?
Yeah, so if you don't mind, just to clarify, so this is one of the dedicated open spaces that was part of the Tanglewood development, and so that's what the question or conundrum is that it was never approved to be any build site. It's actually, there are portions of the stormwater system for the golf course that go through and exist on the property, and so ultimately, the solution is to come to the board and request a modification to that plan development if he wants to proceed down that path.
Well, that would be at a later meeting, right?
Correct, yeah.
How was that property even sold?
It shouldn't have been.
It seems,
It shouldn't have been, no.
I don't understand how it was sold. if it's
It should have
open.
been combined with the rest of the golf course outlots to begin with. And I don't know the backstory on it.
Well, let us go ahead and look into it, and then we'll get back in touch with you. And that's about all we can offer tonight in the call to the public. It's basically, we don't usually comment, so, okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
Fair?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to come on up? Okay, seeing no one, we're going to close the call to the public, and we're going to move on to reports. First one up, DDA.
Sorry, I disconnected you to do that.
I decided I'm going to use my time at this meeting just to do a short, couple-minute presentation of some photos from the lighting up the grand event, so you guys can see what happened at that. So it should go right into the video here, so. Maybe not. Played it earlier today, let's see.
You could always act it out.
Nobody wants to see that. There we go.
Hey, Lise? Lise, would you turn the lights off?
Do you want them on?
that kind of gives you just a little wrap-up of everything that took place. We do have, just so you're aware, the lighted pathway is still running until Saturday morning, so Friday night will be the last chance to catch it. And then we are looking for some volunteers this Saturday from 9 a.m. to noon. We're going to be taking everything down and storing it. So thank you to everybody that's been able to participate in one of the activities associated. We had a great turnout and looking forward to next week.
Thank you, Amy. That was really nice, and you guys have really done a nice job bringing fun to the DDA, and, you know, congratulations on all the good things you've done with the music on the Grand and lighting up the Grand. It was all just really, really high-end, put together well. And we also have to thank the volunteers and the church. The church, you know, giving us the property to work on has been just tremendous. Couldn't have done it without them. So thank you very much for that. Okay, going to move on. Chief.
I have to bring videos now?
Sure. You got any?
Happy New Year.
Just have to act it out.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to, it's a brief report, just wanted to announce for 2022, we had 1,764 incidents, and which is a new high for this township, which is not surprising. And also just wanted to thank the public and the officials that came out for our push-in ceremony and Ladder 24 dedication on December 21st. We had a good turnout, and Ladder 24 is now Lyon Township's first ladder truck in service, and Happy New Year again.
Very cool. Thank you, Chief. All right, we're moving on to the Sheriff, Sergeant Fortier. How you doing?
Very good. How about yourself?
Very good, thank you.
Happy New Year to everybody.
Hey, happy
I just have a couple of things. Shop with a Hero was outstanding this year. It was held on December 21st. It was a great time for all the kids to bring a little brightness to the kids through the holidays. We had 79 kids that attended, and through the help with the fire department there as well, the Shop with a Hero was a great success. Few end of the year numbers for you. Last year, Oakland County Sheriff's Office responded to 15,453 calls for service in Lyon Township, handling 154 investigations and 584 traffic crashes. So we've been extremely busy this year, and if anybody has any questions, I'll entertain them.
Anyone? I just have to say, great job.
Well, thank you, sir.
Great job.
And Happy New Year to everybody as well.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Planning Commission. Brian, I don't know if you ever want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the Planning Commission only held one meeting in December. We talked about architectural standards, modifications for our industrial buildings, and landscape standards for I guess in combination with those architectural standards, landscape standards that would do a better job on some of our large industrial buildings. The Planning Commission also held their conceptual review of the project that's on your plate tonight, the Cattails Cove Plan Development.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. CBA? Lisa, anything from the ZBA?
There was no December meeting, and there is no January meeting.
Oh, okay. All right, building. Dave?
Yeah, Happy New Year to everybody. It's good to be here again. Last month we had a total number of permits of 170. 10 of those were new residential and 28 remods and stuff. So we had a total number of 1,069 inspections. Total building was 35 compared to 39 last year, but more value this year than last year. Let me see what else I got for you. We had 7 commercial jobs that went on in November, permits given out, a couple of big jobs that over there at the Wall Bridge property off of South Hill down in there, that one got going, along with some smaller ones. the cantina, Mojave Cantina. That started with their footings and everything, and that's going strong. Hopefully, we see some more coming up. There's some stuff, in the works. We got some plans and stuff, and see how that goes.
Any questions for building? All right, the only update I have on the water is we're still waiting on the golden ticket from Eagle, and being that they were out for the last couple of weeks, we are going to start hounding them tomorrow, and we are sitting back ready to turn the switch within days of the okay. So we are that close. But
Is there any idea whatsoever?
none whatsoever.
Because it's been done and built and finished for 2 months, right? And we've been doing tests and tests.
Yeah, the tests are finished. They're all in the hands of the DEQ, or Eagle.
What is Eagle waiting for?
That's a question we can all ask them. I have no clue. They won't respond. They've been on vacation for the last few weeks. I'm hoping tomorrow they're back and we can start hounding them. That's all we can do. We cannot turn the switch until they say, okay. You guys are all welcome to call them if you like. Because I've been calling them. Well, they don't listen to me, so.
Yeah,
That's all I got.
Running them down, but and they've been out here and meeting and testing and...
Well, they haven't been testing. We did all the
We've been doing
testing,
the
and
testing,
we've
but-
turned it all in, and it's all passed pretty much, so it's a brand-new system for them, and they're just not sure. And they're taking every precaution. It is drinking water, I understand that. We're waiting for them
Well, you
now.
would think, though, that we gave them a set of plans, they approved that set of plans, we built to those specifications, so everything that they needed us to do from the beginning,
Yep.
we've done. So we built
Everything.
the plan as it was approved and permitted.
There's no problem with that.
I know, I just, that is, I feel like
They're just
at least
sitting
owed
there.
an answer. I
You know-
don't know, we don't set the timetable, I know that they do, but it's unacceptable for them to just continue to ignore us. We spent
You deal
quite a
with
bit of
them too
time-
in your job.
I know, quite a bit of time, considerable amount of taxpayer dollars, or user dollars, and I think it's really unfortunate that,
I'll tell
state
you,
agency won't give us.
The on-site inspection that they did, they were like so impressed with the whole process. I mean, I couldn't even believe, I would have, the way they were acting, I thought they were going to run right back and approve it. And then she ran back and she so-called approved it and ran it up the flagpole, and now it's up the flagpole, wherever that goes.
Yeah, and I guess, again, I don't have a problem with the process, but very few people begin a process without knowing what the steps look like and what the timeline looks like, at least roughly, and to not get an answer from a state agency it's embarrassing. They should be embarrassed that they can't give us an answer or a timeline, or something.
Do you have
It's
any numbers? Do
unacceptable.
you have any numbers you can call?
I don't know.
I'm telling you, there's no
I'm sure
way
the
out.
18 viewers who are watching right now on YouTube.
Anybody that would like to
probably end up
call,
on the
please,
news,
help me.
and- Right, and so it'll be fixed tomorrow. But it's just frustrating. And it's not frustrating because they want us to go through a process.
You're
We want-
frustrated?
We want to go through this process. We want it to be safe. This is not about safety. It's complete. It's been complete for 60 days.
Yeah. Do you know how long I've been dealing with this?
Well, I know
5
because-
years, every day.
Well, I was going to say, because the whole thing took 6 times longer than it should have taken to get approved, where
Yep.
they would send us plans back and want to know how many people could stand outside the water tower. We said, well, how many people do you want to be able to stand outside the water tower? Things like that.
We did go through COVID because they used that a lot.
Yeah. Well, I won't say anymore.
I don't, I'm just telling you, I'm doing everything I can do. Any phone calls to them is welcomed. Call them.
I'd be more than happy to make some calls.
You could have started 60 days ago. Okay, sorry, I can't give you the answers that you
No,
want.
I actually, those were more rhetorical questions. I didn't think.
You guys gonna yell at me down there? You got anything to say? Okay. Hey, it is moving forward. I
Thank you
will
for
give
putting up with it.
Thank you, please. All right, we're going to close the reports, and we're going to move on. We have 2 public hearings tonight. They're both concerning industrial development districts. One is a termination of a portion, the other is a termination of the remainder. And I would like, please, inform the public on what exactly this IDD is, Amy, please?
Yep.
So industrial development districts are required to be the first stage in a two-stage process for applying for tax abatements. Last year, the Township Board of Trustees passed Resolution 2022-09 on April 4th prohibiting any further acceptance of tax abatement applications. Currently, there are 10 IDDs within the township, and because an IFT facility must be located within an established IDD, leaving any of the IDDs in effect beyond the expiration of any current IFTs may convey to the state the incorrect message that the township is willing to consider tax abatements. So what we're trying to do right now is clean up the process so that any IDDs that have expired IFTs in them are being dissolved so that we're not sending mixed messages. So right now in IDD number 10, SW North America had their IFT expired on December 31st of 2022. So we are recommending, or with this resolution, proposing to, that's SW North America is in IDD number 11. So that was the last remaining parcel within that IDD. So the resolution tonight is to completely dissolve IDD number 11. And in IDD 10, there are 6 total parcels, and of those, 4 of them currently do not have any active IFTs. So we're proposing the resolution to withdraw 4 of those 6 parcels from that IDD number 10. So it's the same process that we went through last year with the other IDDs that had inactive parcels, just replacing the ones and cleaning up the books so that we fall in line with everything that's available to dissolve for 2022 that expired.
Okay, so being that that's been said, we're going to go ahead and we're going to open up the first public hearing, termination of a portion of Industrial Development District Number 10. I'd like to open that public hearing at 7:23, and anyone in the public would like to come up and comment, now's the time. Okay, seeing no one, we're going to close the first public hearing at 7:24, and we're going to move on to the second public hearing, which is the termination of the remainder of the Industrial District Number 11. At 7:24, I'd like to open up that public hearing. And anyone would like to come up and comment, now's the time. Okay, seeing no one, we're going to close that public hearing at 7:24. And we're going to move on to new business, since we have no unfinished business. First order of new business, Cattails Cove Development, Plan Development Conceptual Review. Brian, you want to go ahead and lead us in?
I will, thank you, John. For consideration this evening is the concept review of a redevelopment of Cattails Golf Course on 9 Mile Road, just east of Griswold. And this is a property that has been planned for quite some time, since the 2015 master plan, actually all the way back to the 2012 master plan, with the anticipation that golf courses are getting redeveloped into single-family properties. And so this is not a surprise for the township that a proposal is coming before us. But what is being proposed are 182 ranch-style single-family homes with lot widths of 55 and 65 feet. The project would preserve roughly 90 acres of the entire property, which is a little over half of the property being preserved as open space, and that does include wetlands and woodlands that are on the site currently. It proposes 6 miles of pathways, some of which are new, some of which are existing cart paths, and a large portion, the southwest quadrant of the site, will go largely untouched. So, as I mentioned earlier, the Planning Commission did review the concept at their December meeting. Their comments were largely concerning the overall density of the project, which is 182 units. Per the parallel plan, we could conceivably allow up to 81 units. The parallel plan shows 65 lots, and at 1.2 units an acre, we would be looking at 81 lots. There is a point that I think you'll find in Leslie's letter that the owners have paid into the sewer. They've been assessed and paid for sewer taps. And so Leslie may or may not comment on that, but that is something that we should be considering as we're considering the permitted density of the project. Overall, we have a list of recognizable benefits that are provided as part of the application process. One item that I'd like to hit on is the avoidance of a grid street pattern, which is something that our ordinance desires, curvilinear roads, things like that. But at the same time, the ordinance recognizes that there shouldn't be a straight shot out to a main road. And so we talked a bit at the Planning Commission meeting about some modifications needed to this eastern driveway should the project move forward. This is a pretty lengthy road that's a straight shot out to 9 Mile, and so we understand that the applicants have been working on potential options for redesigning that. The other street item that came up, Patty, who's not here this evening, mentioned that Meadows of Lion, which is a project that was previously approved and is still valid on the property to the west, included a stub street to this property line, and so it was the desire of the Planning Commission, at least in concept, to have that connection completed with an update to this project. So that's something to consider as well. Overall, though, the project does qualify for our plan development for consideration as a plan development in your ordinance. We have no concerns with the ability to utilize that mechanism on the site. All of the lots will be single-family residential. As I mentioned, 55 and 65-foot lot widths. The other point that the Planning Commission talked about was the proposed separation of buildings, which was 5-foot minimum spacing, 5 and 10-foot side yard setbacks on each lot, with a minimum spacing between the structures at 15 feet. That was a point of discussion with the Planning Commission because the plan development ordinance requires 30 feet of separation between those homes. The township does have the ability to modify that particular standard if you find that it's appropriate. Outside of that, all of the other elements of the plan development that would be required in terms of a pathway along the frontage, paving of 9 Mile Road for this project, utility connections, things of that nature are all proposed as we would expect, so we have no concerns in that regard. Our big question from a planning standpoint is whether or not that proposed density is something that the township can accommodate. So again, those numbers were 65 units shown on the parallel plan, 81 units would be allowed under our 1.25 unit per acre density based on that parallel plan, and there are 182 homes proposed. So with that, that's a summary of our comments in the Planning Commissions, and I can take any questions you might have.
Okay. Thanks, Brian. Anyone else like to comment before we bring the applicants up?
I guess, is Leslie going to say something? I had a question for you, but...
Yeah, I can give a quick update on a couple of items in our report. Regarding the road improvement, initially the traffic report wasn't clear whether or not the applicant was going to construct a signal at 9 Mile and Griswold, but that project actually is an RCOC planned project for 2023. So the road improvements associated with the application are really frontage improvements only, which is required in your zoning ordinance and taper lanes to 9 Mile. So that's a clarifying point from the initial submittal. Stormwater management, the applicant will be required to submit some detailed analysis with a preliminary ED, assuming that the applicant is going to move forward. So soils analysis, really everything for us to be able to tell if this site, our project will conform with the current standards, county standards. And as Brian mentioned, there's a couple of things related to the sanitary sewer. Number one, the applicant is proposing to extend the public sewer to their east property line, and we will evaluate the sizing of that sanitary sewer at the preliminary PD stage. And this parcel was part of the Southwest Sewer SAD, and it was assessed for 127 units for construction. However, the parcel did not prepay their capital charges in that SAD. The gravity sewers and downstream pump station, which is Pump Station 9, will be also reviewed in more detail during preliminary. So that's the summary of our report.
Okay. Did she answer your question?
Well, just for clarity, so my question was kind of related to both of you, is how many RDUs have they actually paid for? Or are they in the process?
27 worth of construction.
Okay.
You good?
So in that SAD, I guess just to clarify, there were two components. There was the construction that everybody had an assessment on that was included, and then some elected to prepay their capital charge at the 2006 rate. And that was done because those funds were used at the time for a treatment plant modification. Typically, you don't assess what we call the tap fees or REUs unless you're using it for a project specific, that at least was the bond counsel at the time gave us that information. But in this case, they only paid for the construction component.
Okay. All right, well, let's go ahead then, bring the applicants up and come on up and...
Hi, everyone. My name is Tony Mosconi, 1586 Rockfield, Troy, Michigan, 48085. I'm just going to tee this up, no pun intended, with just background on the golf course. And then we have a great team behind us with Brad and Alan and Fadi and Leo, and they'll be filling in the pieces here as we move along the presentation. Happy New Year, everybody. 1989, my brother Mario bought the property on 9 Mile with the intent to build a public golf course. 2 years later, in September of 1991, and the addition of my other brother Frank as a partner, Cattails opened up for business. Since then, we've had the same ownership in place. Since 1991, we have serviced the community in a variety of manners, including well over 750,000 golfers. We've helped fund thousands of charities, supported numerous events. We are the home course for the South Lyon girls golf team. We're the home course for the Catholic Central boys team for many years. Numerous weddings. We've employed hundreds of local Lyon Township young men and women as their first quote-unquote real job. And then in fact helped many through college. And then on the other end, on the opposite side of the spectrum, we've also helped many of the adults take their first steps into retirement, whether a starter or a ranger. My brother thought at some point with the exit on 23, as you look at 9 Mile moving east, it would eventually be paved beyond Pontiac Trail. That, along with the other factors we felt would be sort of the jump point to begin the entitlement work to transform Cattails into a different, unique residential development just based on the property itself. It's just a beautiful piece of property. We firmly believe we're at that point. 9 Mile, along with Griswold and Curry, as everybody knows here, is now paved. There's residential development to our north, to our west. South Lyon has become now a highly rated school system consisting of 2 high schools. But unfortunately, 14 months ago, both of my brothers, different times, had passed away of cancer, so I'm left. We had all decided prior that knowing that the road was getting paved and development was going to start across the street, that it was time to look at Cattails moving into its next phase. In fact, I think it was a couple years ago, we had a Zoom with Leslie and Brian looking at the golf course and putting out a very preliminary plan at that time. We continue to focus on the overall thought that the property has always been accessible for a variety of users, whether it's seniors, families, beginners, middle to highly skilled golfers, fundraisers, weddings, on and on. Same as we've done at Total Sports, our other local business. As we move into the latter stage with our property, we want to continue what we have strived for since the day we opened. Make our land attractable and usable to a range of folks. With this in mind, to achieve our goal and service an array of homeowners, for instance, that people that want to remain in Lyon Township, people that maybe want to move to our community, maybe because of the school system, or just want to be near their parents because maybe their parents are getting older and they think it's time for them to maybe help their parents, and vice versa. Maybe the parents can help out, as it happened with us with kids, watching kids as we both worked. We designed a layout that can achieve this and at the same time preserve the natural beauty that fills our property. Brian stole some of my thunder, but the property at Cattails is gorgeous. It's a beautiful setting that includes woods, wetlands, and rolling hills. The development we have designed takes full advantage of this, and I'll repeat this a few times, but the 56% of the property is remaining open land. In fact, about 55 acres of that southwest quadrant will be contiguous site that features mammoth sea of cattails, thick woods, and low wetlands. And this, I think, is an important factor based on the way this layout is sort of designed. 95% of the backyards will face open space. So 95% of the homes won't have another home as their backyard. We are aiming, as Brian said, to connect the cart paths in that southwest quadrant with the residential sidewalks, making a long, winding, walking bike path that traverses the entire property. With that, especially in that southwest quadrant, it's going to reveal many scenic and tranquil views and stops where people, as they're walking or riding, can stop and take a look. Or they could turn it into a passive parkland. Our team is a complete collaboration of respected individuals, as I said, Fadi, Brad, Alan, and Leo, and James. Many respected individuals in their field and the township are familiar with. We have a tremendous amount of experience in a variety of development work. Transforming Cattails Golf Club into Cattails Preserve or Cove, we're still not sure yet on the final name, is a fantastic opportunity for us to continue to serve the community from a golf and rec standpoint to now a one-of-a-kind development that will benefit the Lyon Township area for many years to come. All right, now we're in the presentation part. Should I just click here, Brian?
Yeah, if you hit the play button on the screen, is there a play button up on the screen there?
All right, maybe I'll go to the next one.
Yeah, well, it'll give you control. And now you can minimize that and go ahead and... Yeah, there you go.
And just use the arrow key?
Yep.
All right. On this page, and there's further pictures into the package here, but 56% of the site is preserved. Open space, as Brian said, about 90 acres. We sit on 160 acres. So over half of that is going to remain open land, whether it's wetlands or not. The open space is about 35 acres, wetlands is approximately 33 acres, and woodlands is about 22.5 acres. That southwest quadrant, I'm telling you, is a beautiful area, especially that corner of the cattails. That's plus or minus about 55 acres, and it's all contiguous, as you can see on the layout. The cart paths are going to remain. As you can see, some of the stuff that Fadi has done, we're going to tie that into the development per the bikeways and the pathways. 95% of the lots are going to remain open space, and I think that's a wonderful thing. My house in Troy, I have 450 feet back, only 80 feet wide, and it's wonderful sitting back out there in the summertime with no one behind me. Right now, we're aiming for 55 and 65 wood lots to appeal to the young families and independent seniors and anyone in between. I've lived both of those lives, once being a young family, 3 blocks away from my parents. It was an incredible help for us growing up, our kids, raising our kids. And then when my parents got old, it was a blessing to be nearby just to help them fix the TV when the TV went down or do whatever they needed at that time. As Brian mentioned also, the 6 miles of continuous pathways, I think that sounds pretty remarkable, and I think Alan said the last time we met with the Planning Commission, it's a variety of pathways. It's not like the same track over and over. There's a ton of different ways to traverse this property. You'll see later in the package there's some great preserve of the view sheds. You'll see some pictures of the golf course, and some of those areas, most of those areas are going to remain. And the topography, as I said from the very beginning, is gorgeous. The northern portion of the property was all open space, and the southern portion of the property, as you can see, that we're saving a lot of that land and preserving it, that was wetlands and rolling hills. think Brad's up to Brad. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Evening, Brad Streeter, I'm a planner with MKSK, address is 19546 Beverly Hills. And I'll just, Tony covered a lot of things that I was going to cover, so I'm going to go through, maybe not repeat some of the things and just add some additional things. Tony mentioned there was a plan presented before to the engineer and the planner, so this is that plan. And there are a lot of changes made from that plan to the plan we're presenting, and this is in your packet, but we've reduced the density. We got rid of some of the development in the southwest corner and kind of just improved the overall layout with the new plan that was presented. Just to give you a little bit of overview, this is our site sort of in the middle, and this just shows sort of the variety of density in the area. So the density to the north of us is about 1 unit an acre. The density to the south of us is higher, like 2.5 or so units per acre. The Meadows, which is directly to the west, is kind of the anomaly where it's much lower density, but it has limitations because it only has one means of access, so that really reduced their density, and has a lot of wetlands. So we're sort of in the middle of lower density to the north and higher density to the south and to the west, and we think that we've kind of carved the right niche of density in consideration there. We also included in your packet sort of a density calculation just to show the variation of density within the area. So as we put together the plan, we have two different lot types. As Tony said, we have 55-foot lots to the west, the darker yellow, and then 65-foot lots to the east and southeast. Those are some typical photos of what the houses would look like there, and we were looking at minimum 5-foot setback and 15 feet between units. And the idea of this plan is to reduce the lot sizes and setbacks from the typical 30-foot setback between units, because to get that 56% open space, you have to reduce the lot sizes and reduce the side yard setbacks. And as Tony said, the reason is people don't really enjoy the side yard, they enjoy the rear yard. So 95% of the lots back up into rear yard. You're going to enjoy the rear yard because that's what most of the people see here, and the side yards have been reduced so we can have that open space in the southwest and throughout the area. And as Tony mentioned, we have about 6 miles worth of trails. So we have like 1.5 miles of the cart paths that are being preserved. We have about just under 2 acres of additional pathways. We have 1.8 miles of sidewalk and about 0.5 mile of pathways along 9 miles. So a variety of non-motorized trails that adds up to about 6 miles of trails, which is something very unique in the area as well. And again, the Meadows to our west doesn't have those amenities that we are providing. One of the things the Planning Commission asked, some of them felt that the side yard setbacks were too narrow, and they preferred the typical 60 feet. And again, you can't come up with 56% open space and preserve that 55 acres in the southwest if you have to have 30 feet between units. So we did, since that meeting, we did different iterations of different side yard setbacks of 10, 15, or even 20 feet between buildings, because we could potentially do that and reduce the size of the houses and still fit them into the 55 or 65-foot yards. And then this is also new from the Planning Commission. We looked at some other areas in this area that have setbacks similar to what we're proposing. And some of these projects, actually, Alan Green, the attorney, and I have worked on in Novi, where we have maybe 25% open space, and they went with 10 feet between units or 15 feet between setbacks, and there they only had 25% open space, not 56% open space. West Bloomfield, which is in the upper left, is another project that had about 22% open space and went down to 10 feet between buildings. So we think that there's a lot of good quality development in Novi and West Bloomfield and other places. I also worked on the Brighton Township Master Plan. We looked at Brighton Township, which has some of the same rural characteristics of Lyon Township, and Plymouth Township. So as we look from the zoning ordinances in the area that have open space preservation goals, you do see these side yard setbacks of 10 feet between units or 15 feet between units, maybe 20 feet between units. I mean, we're interested in hearing comments from the board, but we think 30 feet between units is just kind of a waste of open space, and we would rather have that open space in the rear yard and have all this open space that we're showing. So again, that's sort of the open space plan. This is a drawing that we have just showing, as Tony mentioned, the variety of open space and wetlands and woodlands. So it's not just wetlands that we're preserving. We've got a lot of usable open space that's very usable to the residents, but also to the public. James from MKS is just going to do a quick overview of some of the key vistas of the open space, and that we didn't also show the Planning Commission, but we wanted to show that too. So I'll turn it over to James.
Hi, good evening. I'm James Goff. I'm a landscape architect with MKSK. So as Brad mentioned, there's a landscaping component to this whole PD process. And over the past few months, I've been able to take a look and dive into the township ordinance requirements. And really, I came away with three main takeaways. You'd have to have a buffer zone between different uses. You'd have to have an internal street tree requirement. And you'd have to have a green belt buffer between the development and 9 Mile Road there. And while all these are technically required, we still feel like these would be a really nice complement to all the existing vegetation on site and would be a really nice way to blend the natural with the built environment. So what you're looking at here, this is a greenbelt enlargement plan, and it would basically be a mix of evergreen trees, deciduous canopy trees, ornamental trees, and shrub massing. So that's just kind of a glimpse at what that would look like. So Tony was able to get a drone out here on a nice fall day and got some really great shots of the property. And what we wanted to do here was basically to show, the different areas that we were going to preserve and the different areas that we were going to develop. So these first two slides kind of focus on development, and you can see, that we're using the wide open spaces. The topography is relatively flat, so we're not, there's not a lot of excess cut and fill. We're not clear cutting woods. So we're really taking advantage of the land there. That is kind of the same idea with picture number 2 here. And then the last 3 slides, these are really the areas that we're going to preserve. So again, these are the amenities. It's, the ponds, the wetlands, the woodlands. These are the things that would be attractive to people living in this development. So as you can see, here's a look at some of the wetlands and the woodlands. So this is a pathway plan we put together. I think, as mentioned before, there's over 6 miles of paths, 4.5 miles of proposed paths and 1.5 miles of existing pathways. The existing pathways are in orange. The proposed pathways are the dashed red. The blue is the internal sidewalks that circulate throughout the site, and then at the very top, the green, that's the 8-foot shared use path along the front of the property. So with that, I'm going to let Fadi, are you going to talk about engineering?
Yeah.
Okay.
What next? I think there is one for utilities. Is that the one?
That's you.
Fadi Khalil from Angle Design. I'm the civil engineer on this project. What we did with this project, I'm going to talk about utilities. First thing, we have the water main. There is a water main that was extended through a different project just across the street, north side of 9 Mile Road. It's to the west side. We're extending that all the way to cover the property on 9 Mile Road. It's 16-inch water main. So we're extending it all the way east to the east property line. Plus, we're looping that water main throughout the property to serve all the lots with an 8-inch water main. The sanitary system, the same thing. There is a 12-inch sanitary sewer across the street also. We're going to extend it. It's north of 9 Mile. We're going to extend it south of 9 Mile, and then we're going to extend it east and west to cover the property from the east to the west property lines. This is for future, if you want to extend it, water and sewer. Plus the same thing within the property, we're proposing for now, it's an 8-inch line, 8-inch gravity line. When we do the final design, we might increase that size to be like 10-inch or so, but we'll do that later. For the storm system, what we did with the storm, I mean, we're collecting everything, all the developed area, it's all going into detention basins as required by the new ordinance with 4 bays and open detention, and then we're discharging into the wetland areas. And we provided like the shapes of the ponds to fit with the existing topography, and if you look at the color picture, it looks a lot better. But this is how we picked those low areas. We have 5 different detention basins, and this design was based on 0.1 CFS per acre. We can do better, but we use we're very conservative with this one. I think that's all what I have.
Good evening, Happy New Year to you all, and that was a fast year. I'm Alan Green, counsel on the project. My role has primarily been to advise on the PUD requirements and help the team put together and meet the requirements. If the project gets to the point we hope it will get, I'll be working with the township on development agreements and other legal documents. But I did want to comment, though, we missed a couple things. One of the things that the project was intended to do, as well as preserve all the open space, the topography, was to preserve the rural view shed. And you'll see that in the material. When you drive by this project, you're going to see visually landscaping, open space, existing trees, things like that. And I will say, you know, I've worked on a lot of projects before, and this was a lot of fun in the sense that it started a couple years ago with the concept plan, but we've really been working for the last year on the project. I think I've participated in 12 different development team meetings, and Tony, the owner, is committed to preserving the beauty of his property. So we sit there and we look at, you know, the different levels of topography, what the view sheds would be. These folks went out and they took golf carts and they rode across all the property, and then we saw the videos, and that's what determined in large part, how the open space was determined. So it's a very interesting process by someone who cares about what people are going to see and how they're going to live in the future. As to the housing, we were trying to fill a niche, a little bit of a different niche right now. You do have a variety of housing opportunities in the township, but again, what's most in demand right now are smaller lots for people like me. I mean, I guess I'm an active empty nester, you call it. I'm an old person. I would love to live in a place like this. I would love a smaller lot that I don't have to take care of. I'm stuck in the house that my children grew up in with me, and there's no place for me to go where I live. I mean, there isn't any place like it. I'd like to be able to go and have a pathway system like this for recreation and beauty. I'd love to be able to sit on a back deck and just stare out at the loveliness. So I personally think something like this is going to be special. But again, we're trying to come up with something that meets that target audience and young families, and we're struggling always with affordability. And I know you guys know that right now. We're just doing this right now in a housing recession. Everything's come to a blinding halt, and I was just reading about this. We don't create enough housing to meet the demand out there. We all know that. And housing's very expensive right now. So it's a challenge to do something that creates an environment like this with all the amenities we're going to provide in open space, and again, try to provide housing that people can afford. And again, this isn't low-income housing by any means. So that's my role. I'm just going to be working with the team on this and helping out in that regard. And if you have any questions of any of us, we'd be glad to answer it. It seems almost, it's not unfair because you're giving us all the time we want, so you guys are great. But I think about all the effort and time that's gone into it just to achieve this point. We could probably talk about some of the things, the concepts, the houses, the architecture, but we'll probably do all that next time around for a preliminary plan. But all that's been thought about even at this stage of conceptual review. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Does that conclude? Okay. So now I'm going to open up to the board, and you can start talking about the things you like and maybe the things you don't like. Lisa, do you want to go ahead and start the conversation here?
Sure. My first comment would be that I would agree with the concern with the straight shot out to 9 Mile. So I know that that's been addressed with the Planning Commission. And then I believe Brian said that Patty had commented regarding a stub street to the property to the west. So I think that that might be something that has, that might be handled at the Planning Commission level. I do have a question.
We do have a question on that. One idea we had, because it's kind of different densities and so forth, and we can look at that, but one idea we had was maybe even just a pathway connection, so at least people could take advantage of our pathways and at least providing a pathway connection from the proposed neighborhood to the west through our site, be less disruptive on our site and so forth. So that would be, see what consideration the township would have as that as an alternative. So
I am perhaps in the minority where I do not like developments to connect, although I do believe that Mr. O'Neill and Mr. Enlow are quite the proponents of developments connecting. So I, at this point, don't have a solid opinion one way or the other. I just want to know that that had been brought up at the Planning Commission. So if that, I'll kind of leave that, at least recognize that that was a comment that was brought up. And I'll see what Sean and Chris have to say about that. I do have a question on page 6 of your packet. It shows that there, it has been mentioned, side yard setbacks of desiring 15 feet, but then on page 6 it says 5-foot side yard setbacks, 10 feet between buildings. So is that still a possibility, the 10 feet between buildings?
yeah, we had shown the Planning Commission 10 feet between structures, and we've been, since the Planning Commission meeting, we've been looking at alternatives of 15 feet between units or 20 feet between units instead of 10.
Okay, because I read, I'm trying to keep track of all the, in the review letter, I thought it had only mentioned 15 feet. On, let's see, page...
Yeah, one of the options we showed tonight was, go back, was...
I thought it was page, is it page 7 of your letter?
Yeah, here, this is the different, like, side yard setbacks we're looking at. So we're trying to address the Planning Commission idea of having more space between units that would still fit within the lot sizes. So we haven't committed to any of these, but we wanted you to see that we are looking at different options, and then to show those photos of 10 or 15 or 20 feet from other quality developments in the area. So.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify what the review letter said compared to what was in the packet. And just as a personal opinion, a photo example of side yard setbacks in Novi that really doesn't sway me, because when I go through Novi, I cringe when I see that very narrow side yard setback. So if that was a goal to say, look at how great this looks, I don't think that that really achieved your goal. At least from my opinion. And then when I'm looking at the last comment on Brian's letter, it says that the board should offer advice to the applicant on the issues presented in this letter and those brought up by other township consultants. And I guess my advice would be to get closer to the side yard setbacks as part of our PD requirements and get closer to the density that we have in our PD ordinance. And when I look at that Article 7 in our plan development, our design standards, It shows that a high priority, let's see, different high priority density criteria would justify an increase in density, and almost, I believe, all of yours are in the moderate level, and moderate level said that an increase in density is determined by a case-by-case basis. So perhaps to remind you of what our ordinance says, a high priority item for a community benefit for a density criteria would be protection of land from annexation, which this does not do, funding of improvements in parks, which this does not do, donation of land of parks or open space to retain the land for the common good in perpetuity, which this does not do, paving, making substantial improvements to or funding of improvements to township roads where the entire township benefits, this does not do, construction and/or donation of community buildings and/or the land for such buildings where the need has been identified by the township, which this does not do. You do hit, I will recognize that you do hit the moderate items, and that would conclude my comments.
Okay, thank you, Lise. Robert, you want to go ahead and give some comments?
Sure. So let's see, one thing, because we like to talk about pathways, and you were talking about reusing internal pathways, which is great, but I want to point out that on your bike path along the 9-mile frontage, you have it listed at 8 feet, and I believe our ordinance requires that to be 10-foot pathway, so something that should get taken care of, shouldn't be too big of a deal. While we're talking about that, you're leaving the cart paths and things in that southwest corner from the aerial, it looks like that area currently has, a fair amount of it is currently fairways. So I guess I'm just curious, what that will end up looking like. Would it continue to be mowed short like that? Would it be more naturalized as more of a prairie kind of space? Or
others on the team but we've been looking at all those options, like could be in the association, and how much maintenance do we want? A maintenance-free layout? Do we want part of it maintained? Some people might, we told the planning commission, some people might like the looks of the golf course but no golfers, and we could do some things to make it still look like a golf course in terms of mowing. So all those different options that you mentioned are things that we're looking at.
Okay, and yeah, so similarly along that, obviously, it sounds like, it would retain, it would be part of the development, the association would be responsible for maintenance, but what I guess is maybe slightly ambiguous is you talked about connectivity to neighboring areas, so just some clarity eventually around what level of access to the public at large or neighboring developments would be allowed, even though the association is responsible for it. Let's see here. The side yard setbacks, I guess, it doesn't necessarily bother me having lower space between buildings than 30 feet, and it seems like we've had kind of a trend lately where we've had a lot of developers wanting to do that, and I believe in some cases we've granted some reductions from the 30 feet. So I guess this is maybe more a note to Brian to possibly take back to the planning commission, and maybe we need to look at revising that ordinance if we keep letting people do less than what it says they should do. But I mean, 10 feet between buildings seems a little scrunched to me. Just, I would be curious to hear from our fire department about things on that, because we don't want to get too close, particularly in the two-story area of the development. But ultimately, if it's something where we're okay from a safety perspective and we get, some sort of benefit for it, then I'm not necessarily opposed to less than the 30 feet. What's the other thing? Oh, the stub street. I guess it annoys me when I see a development that has a stub street that stays forever a stub street. So I would lean towards having an actual vehicular connection there, but if for some reason that doesn't pan out, I would want to see at least a pathway connection and not just nothing in that space. It looks like in the planning commission notes, you guys talked a little bit about the 9-mile paving. I don't know if you have any more information about, what portion of the road would end up being paved or unpaved at the end of this.
No, Fleece and Vandenbrink did the traffic study for a higher density, so some of their recommendations were for higher density, and before the road commission had moved forward with some of the improvements that the engineer mentioned. But the idea right now is paving our frontage. That would be the commitment. That would be a public benefit of making a pavement, an improvement
It's
to
actually a requirement.
Yeah, as Chris said, I wouldn't necessarily count that as benefit because it is just required, but.
You can't technically require it in the law, but we would pave it as part of the PD. So.
I guess, by requirement, I guess mean it's baked into the assumption of if you're doing this kind of development, it's a given for when we see these projects, but.
Well, I can clarify that. One of the requirements to use the PD mechanism in the township's ordinance is the requirement that it's on a paved road. So that's
how
it's technically incorporated into the ordinance.
All right. And then while we're talking traffic, it looks like you've got, in the presentation, I didn't dig through, any actual traffic study pages, but one section, it looks like you're calling out an increase of about 1,400 vehicle trips per day, and then in another place, you're using a different number. It's 1,200 trips per day increase.
Yeah, so originally the traffic study was done with a higher density and without the taking into consideration of the development that's already there. Mm-hmm. So the more recent numbers take out, here's the trips that are already using the site, and just adding the additive additional trips, not taking it as a greenfield site with no development. So that's the difference. But we'll provide that on a more, we'll have Fleece and Vandenbrink update the study once we make the changes from the Planning Commission and staff in your direction tonight. We'll come up with an updated traffic study showing the road commission's improvements and the new numbers based on development, and subtracting the traffic that's already there. So all that will be cleaned up in the next submittal. So.
All right, and then I guess just to clarify general, like lot type kind of stuff, the one chunk, sorry, I can't remember which one was east versus west here, but one would be all ranches and the other would be all 2-story, or is there still kind of a mixed up?
Mix of 1-story and 2-story, and eventually we'll have architectural standards and diversity standards and so forth, but the idea would be some ranches, could be one story in either type of development. More likely you'd see the ranches on the smaller, the 55 foots, but you could get ranches on the other. And we only showed a couple of photos here, but a couple of the other examples we have, at least West Bloomfield has both ranches and 2-story, and a variety of 2-story types as well.
Okay, nice, yeah, because I appreciate when there's a little bit of, when things are mixed together, you get some variety, and it's not, you're looking at the same thing in a row, so. I guess the only other thing I didn't touch on was the street going straight for so long, and I'm sure you're going to have some alternative, so.
Okay, good, Robert? Sean, go ahead.
I agree with most everything that's been said. Has there been any discussion or thought on doing this with a condo, like the empty nester is just a true condo, and then site condos for the single family and that approach? We've seen a little bit of that, and that seems to be catching on as far as like the empty nester product's concerned, because that comes along with a lot of the amenities that an empty nester might want. Snow removal, lawn maintenance, things like exterior maintenance that old people like Alan and I would like to have done for
You're
us?
not that old.
Maybe more hair than I do, but go ahead.
The answer is yes, and that's really the distinction between the two neighborhoods that are there right now, between the 55 and 65. So when we talk about empty nester, it's what you're talking about. It's a different level of maintenance and control. So on the empty nester side or the condo side, the association will be responsible for cutting the lawn, the sprinkler systems, doing that kind of maintenance, where the other side, which is more of the site condos, they'd be responsible for cutting your own grass, doing that. Is that what you're getting at, as opposed to not?
Will you still own your lot, or will it all be general or limited common element? I mean, this is shown and divided up as if they're lots. That's what I'm assuming that you're...
Right, no, it'd be, there would be, if you did the empty nester side, it's not restricted to empty nesters, but if you do it as a condo, a site condo, then yes, there would be limited general common elements.
So as our population ages, there's certainly a demand for, a need for empty nester type products. And, age restrictions and all that stuff becomes complicated, who polices it, and then there's all kinds of lending issues. It's sort of a mess, especially in Michigan. Other states it might be easier, and you know that. So I guess when I hear that the empty nester side, that's maybe a 55-foot lot, and I'm going to jump around a little bit.
It's okay.
I think with that type of product, I'm used to seeing single story, so I don't object to a 15-foot side yard separation when it's a one-story home, or maybe a one-story home with a small loft that's centered, so you're not having tremendous wall heights. Where some of the products you've shown, and I've said this 20 times in this room, I choose to live the way I want to live. We all choose the way we want to live, and if someone wants to live in that kind of an arrangement, I don't have to like it, I don't have to live there. But I guess as I sit here, I look at some of the houses that you showed, and they're nice homes, but it very much looks like with a 10-foot separation between homes that are 2 stories, like an alley with a lawn on it. And that is something that I think is unappealing to me. I think, and I don't want to speak for the fire department, but I think it presents more safety issues than if it were a single-story home with, say, a 15-foot separation. And I don't disagree with what Brad said. I think 30 feet, depending on what you're looking for. I mean, usually you see that kind of separation when you've got side entry garages, but then you need 90-foot plus lots in order to configure a side entry garage. That's what we're talking about here. These are all going to be, front entry garages. But then at that point, I think 20 feet is a fine minimum for a 2-story home, but it's not a fine minimum. 15 is not a fine minimum, I don't think, for a 2-story home. I think it doesn't, you look down the street and I feel like it's just one row of housing. The other thing, most of the projects that we see, and I guess if I had to do it all over again, and maybe others would agree, there are a lot of beautiful pieces of property in this township. Fewer with each passing year because people want to live here, and that's fine. But you've preserved some space in the back. But one of the properties or projects that stands out to me is River. I just asked you, Riverwood Estates. It used to be Forez Farms. You guys remember that from years back? It's on the north side of 10 Mile. And because there's so much wetland up front on 10 Mile, all the homes were forced to the back. They're smaller lots, narrower setbacks, and nobody can see it. You can drive down 10 Mile Road, and in the distance, if you're not paying attention where you're driving, you can see homes in the distance that are very, very tight and maybe similar to what you're looking at here. So I guess I wonder, when you're talking about view shed, and I've been on this property, it's been a number of years, you gotta be careful because you've got so much wetland. 20% of, you talk about 56% open space, let's just be real here though, 20% of it is wetland, so it's really just unusable for your density calculation, which is driving your density problem up a bit. And that's not a secret, it's just how you approach it and how it's marketed. But it seems like, to me, if you were to create more of an open field from the main road, I don't think it's as objectionable to maybe the neighbors, because neighbors always come out because they have acreage parcels in this area and they're concerned about, beautiful golf course, now it's going to become, a couple of hundred homes. So was there any consideration to possibly trying to maybe build on some of the open space at the southwest and maybe preserve a little bit more room up front along 9 Mile. I don't want to say similar to what Riverwood Estates did, but to where you can only really see the density, see the massing of homes if you're in the project, which means you're visiting a friend or you're shopping for a home, and, you know.
You could.
One thing, Sean, well, you can address it, but as far as when you're actually on that road, so if you're traveling along 9 Mile from the west, our northwest quadrant there, the road is actually below the property line. So as you're looking towards the golf course, you don't see the golf course, you see a huge mound in front of it. As you're traveling east, when you get to the pond there, then that becomes level with the road. And then as you're moving east past the pond, it starts moving up again. And then once you get past, that's our third green up there, but once you get, I don't know how to describe it, once you get to, let's see if I can do it on the mouse.
It's like a 3-wood from that point.
If you hit into the wetland on the right, yeah.
All right.
It's going to be sad one day, but yeah. So right about there, it starts going back up again, and it's the same thing as on the other side where you can't see the golf course because the road is below, and we have all those mounds back there. And I think, James, we're trying to keep all that kind of stuff the way it is, just to create what you're saying.
I think the things you're bringing up, we haven't shown it in these, because getting more into topography and so forth, but I think we're going to show what are the views from the road to show some of the things that you're saying are captured with the layout. It's not very clear to you because it's 3D or 2D now, but when it's 3D, I think you'll see that.
And I know you guys have been working on this for a while, and you know what you're doing. I'm just asking because I don't have the benefit of knowing how some of those conversations and something.
And you made a good point. We did have several earlier plans that had housing. It was moved. We had housing in some of the park that's being preserved. There's area there, and those were, if you're thinking about you want to buy a lot and have a house, those are the most valuable properties. Sure. I mean, it's gorgeous. And then everybody's just talking about, make it special. What's special? A large contiguous area where everybody can enjoy. And we talked about, the question was raised about what we might do with some of the open space there. We did talk about prairies. We did talk about some of it may be amenities, if you want to have any amenities on the property for the residents, whether it's a soccer field or something like that. We talked about all that. We're going to explore that. But we decided that, to have something that large. And we talk about connectivity. We're proposing, you'll see, there's the development on the other side of 9 Mile. We're proposing to allow connectivity to that. We're going to have sidewalks across our frontage, of course. Somewhere, we've looked at ways to connect it other places right now, but someday it can be. We're not going to restrict it. We're going to have this open in such a way that people could ride their bikes and go through here and be able to enjoy it. So you raised a good point, and we've talked about that, and we'll look at it again. We're thinking about, things like wildlife habitats, things like that.
And there was a project just last month that is, there are a tremendous number of similarities, but there are some similarities, and one of their points was that they were going to provide what you had just said, Alan, that, neighbors could come and use our open space, and they could. I don't usually hang out in other neighborhoods' open space unless I'm visiting someone. I guess you could, but and I think that goes to being more of a moderate benefit, kind of what Lisa said. And I think, obviously, there are a lot of challenges here. There are a lot of competing interests here, and you're trying to come up with, and you're really here proposing something, but you're also asking for feedback and some guidance. And I saw what the Planning Commission feedback was, and I agree with what they said largely, as well. The one thing I wanted to mention was the connection. And I think Lisa's right. I think that part of good planning is having roads that connect. So when, Johnny and Jimmy want to play together because they go to school together, their parents don't have to get in the car and go out on the main road. It'd be great if they could walk. But I don't do a tremendous amount of walking, as we've discussed either, but anyway, they could use, and 9 Mile's not a busy road, but the point is that when you keep traffic off of the main road and allow residential traffic to mix with other residential traffic, you're preventing traffic problems. So I prefer that, and I think connections are critical when they go somewhere. I live in a neighborhood that connected to an old neighborhood that had a stub street that was furious when our neighborhood connected to it, and now I'm the one who's yelling at speeding drivers that live in that neighborhood that cut through. But the good news is there's another guy who's across the street from me, and he yells at the cars at speed too, so I'm not alone. But anyway, I think it's important that we do try to make a connection, because they only have one point of access, and their plan was kind of approved with an expectation that we would then follow through and make the neighboring, and I don't think many people are going to use, this is not an appetizing cut-through point. No, I don't. I mean, it's more of a neighbors visiting neighbors, or more of a pedestrian cut-through, kids visiting kids that they go to school with in the other sub, more than someone trying to cut a busy traffic intersection. But
Sean, we're not saying no for one. We just heard about it and we saw the plan. And of course, that plan now dictates our plan.
Well, and I was going to say, we were looking at an arrow, it appears that this would come in right at the very end of your cul-de-sac on the west end, which could solve the long dead end concern as well. But, I don't know. I mean, I think
we'll look at that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I think the density is certainly an issue. Obviously, when you look at building and clustering smaller lots like this, the benefit is that you're putting less infrastructure in to help offset some of that giving up of open space that could be usable otherwise, but then at the same time, you're asking us to go down to a 55 or 65-foot lot, which is a concession as well, and have narrower setbacks. And I think all of it's up for discussion. I just think we're just pretty high on a number. We talked about the sewer system being designed for 127. Just so happens that it looks like your net acreage is 127, which is, my guess, how none of us in this room came up with that many years ago when this master plan was. Brian was like 10 when that was.
Right. So, that's right. That's probably a good guess.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, that's obviously something I'd like to know more about as time goes on as well. But that's all I have at this point.
Okay.
Good. Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Chris.
All right, I'll try to just mostly echo stuff, but the general road network, it seems to be pretty good. I agree with the long straightaway that maybe you can put a kink in it or something to kind of shift that around, because again, speeding within a residential neighborhood is always a concern. The 10-foot wide pathway on 9 Mile, Robert mentioned that. We were just talking about the connection point to the west that Sean and Patty had mentioned, so I'm a very strong proponent of that. In fact, that was the main reason why I voted against the previous development, because it was one access point for the entire neighborhood. So with that stub street in there, that actually alleviates most of what was not meeting ordinance in that neighborhood, and would also help yours because of the long dead end cul-de-sac there. So if that were to connect, that would help and help with both developments. I like the 30-foot setbacks. I've always wanted a little extra elbow room between the neighbors. I know we've probably gone down a little bit from that on some developments, but really my main sticking point is the density. I came in here dead set on, if you're more than 81 units per your plan, I'm an absolute no. That's until I asked the question about the RDUs, and if the property has purchased 127 RDUs or is in the process of, then obviously that's probably where I'm sitting at for density, is 127 units. And so if you look at that and expand those setbacks out a bit, you can knock off some units in there, meet the setback requirement, and you're on your way to a good development.
Is that all, Chris?
That's all I have.
Okay. All right, I'm not going to sit here and go over and hash over everything that was said. I think there was a lot of good things that were said here. I do believe the biggest hurdle would be the 10-foot between buildings. I don't think anyone on here, on this board, would like to see 10 foot between the buildings. I kind of, agree with Sean on it. It makes it look like alleyways between the buildings, and I think that's going to be a sticking point. I notice that when they build the houses so close, they eliminate windows between the houses because you don't want to look out your window and look right in your neighbor's window, and that to me is a little bit of a weird factor. But I do notice a lot of the homes, they build 10 foot between them, they don't put windows on the sides. And to me, that's kind of crazy not to have a window. But other than that, I think the overall project looks nice. I think you do have a lot of obstacles to get around with the wetlands everywhere, and I think it's a beautiful golf course, and I think it could be put together very well. And I think you've done a lot of work, and I know you've been in a lot, and, I've seen many projects you've brought in, and I know this is something that you're going to do. And I just think it's getting to the end result, right? We just need to get to the point where it works for everybody. And I think by listening to the board tonight, the 160 or 180 homes are going to be a tough one for us to chew, but I'm not sure what you can do to drop that density. I don't know what that'll be, but I think if there's anything to take away from this whole night, that's a biggie. So that's all I have to say, and I hope that everybody was helpful in trying to move you forward, and I know it's a process, but we do appreciate it, and thanks for the time. I mean, I know we've given you a lot of time here, but it's a big project, so.
On behalf of the team, we want to thank, this is the kind of benefit we wanted, to have some good dialogue from you and good direction. We'll go back and look at this and the topography and so forth and come back with hopefully a plan that addresses all or most of those comments, and if not, explain why we didn't. So I appreciate all the time you gave us, our team, to present, and all the comments that you gave us. So we appreciate that we used up like an hour of time, and I want you to know that all that time that you gave us today will be valuable as we start our next iteration. So thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to move on to the 2023 salary resolutions for the Township Board. These should be fairly simple. And I'm not making the first one.
I'll make them. Okay, I will make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-01, salary of the supervisor.
I'll support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
John, I assume you're abstaining?
What's that?
Why?
Don't you usually abstain on your own?
You should be able to vote on his own.
Oh, I don't want to
Well,
vote on
you
it.
can't
They always
abstain.
made me in the past.
You can't pass the trustees' salary without one of us voting. Well, and tonight.
Well, you have enough. You have enough people. Okay, whatever you want to do, but
All right, I'm a no.
You're a no? I'm just keeping track. No. I'll make a motion, so we're good?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-02, resolution establishing the clerk's salary.
Support.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-03, resolution to establish the treasurer's salary.
Anyone want to support that?
Robert, it's your turn.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you were on a roll.
Well, I don't want to hog everything like Sean's doing.
No, I'm not going to do the next one.
All right, support.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Resolution 2023-04 to establish salary for the Township Trustees.
I'll support. I haven't done anything.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Approval of the resolution to termination a portion of the Industrial Development District Number 10.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution number 2023-06, termination of the remainder of Industrial Development District Number 11. Oh, wait, number 10.
Number 10, we need
I skipped,
05.
I'm sorry.
5 first.
Approval, I make a motion to approve the Resolution 2023-05, termination of a portion of Industrial Development District Number 10.
Support.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're going to move on to the resolution termination remainder of District Number 11.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-06, termination of the remainder of IDD District Number 11. Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're going to move on to the setting of the REU, the raising the REUs, and I don't know, Leslie, you want to just explain that real quick? I know all of us understand it, but...
Contract with Lyon Wastewater, your amended contract, requires an annual increase based on the CPI. So your the township auditor and accountant Evans perform the calculations, and therefore the proposed capital charge for 2023 total is $11,258.57.
And just to clarify, the township portion of that does not increase.
No, we did not increase that.
So the township is not increasing. Yeah, I want to just keep saying that. Yes.
I appreciate
Lyon
that.
wastewater portion.
Correct.
Which we're contractually obligated to do.
Yes. Okay, someone want to make a motion for that?
Move the approval of Resolution 2023-07.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're going to move on. Consideration approval of Country Estates Mobile Home Park, proposed connection to township water.
Okay.
Leslie?
This one is a little bit of a unique situation, which is why it's before you. Country Estates is proposing to extend public water main along their 8-mile frontage and to construct a master meter to service the mobile home park. Ideally, a meter is located above ground so that you don't have to dewater the meter pit every time you have reading it lasts longer, etc. While they happen to have an existing building that they would like to have the meter located in, I think it currently houses their pneumatic tank, and it's a location that the township operator is in favor of. Alternatively, they'd be required to construct another building, which really doesn't make a lot of practical sense in my opinion. And so we've worked with the township attorney, and she has drafted this access agreement that would allow the township and/or their representatives to pretty much access the building at any reasonable time. And it's really before you for your consideration if you find that this is acceptable. I do want to apologize, though, the exhibits were not in your packet as of this morning. They were in a previous version. So April helped me out today and provided hard copies for you, and I believe they've been added to the packet, which kind of shows it a little clearer of where this building is located. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, anyone have any questions for Leslie on this connection?
Presumably that,
go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. Presumably they have some sort of system in the park currently that distributes water to each unit, and this is just replacing whatever source that is?
Yes, and their current piping will still remain private.
Okay.
So you're really, the only public main is going to be along the mile.
Right, okay, so there's along the frontage, and then to the building would be public easement for our system.
You can access, but there's going to be there will be a point where private, meaning the township isn't going to maintain it.
Okay.
So that's what I mean by private. So we need to get to the meter to be public, but beyond the meter, it's all private.
Okay, so that's this north-south line on the first page of the drawing is to get to the building, basically?
Well, there will be a parallel easement along 8 Mile, and then there will be another easement into...
Oh, I'm sorry, I was looking at what's actually an arrow pointing to the edge of the easement, and thinking it was an easement. Never mind.
So there still needs to be another easement exhibit drawn of the piping into that meter.
Okay.
So this second page is actually modified to show the additional.
Right.
Was that usually done after it's constructed? So it's centered in there, you do it before? Okay.
So when we approve this, would we just make it, just a note that that change will be
Condition on
made.
that, and any other conditions you may have on the agreement.
Well, this will be similar to the Kensington Park, the way that one is...
Exactly.
Okay.
Do we have an agreement with them, or do we have access to their meter?
No, their meter, we have access to, and I believe it's in a pit.
Okay, probably nearer to the road.
It's by the apartments. It's like there's one meter. That's supposed to work.
Is this gated?
I don't know.
I know there's fencing there. Is this gated? I'm just thinking access, like would we have a copy of the key or is reasonable access considered?
It's not gated.
It's not gated there? Okay.
What else is in this meter room? I mean, are they storing a bunch of their own stuff? Why could we not have a key to this room? I mean, we should have access at all times, I would think.
Well, coincidentally, your operator is the same as their operator, so he does have a key.
Sure.
But I know what you mean.
Right, well, they won't have an operator once they make this connection.
Well,
Their operator goes.
maintain their on-site and their sewage system, but I can ask them for a key.
I mean, it just seems like the fire department has Knox keys to buildings, so when there's an emergency, they can get in. I mean, we're not gonna hang this thing like on a hook for the public. It'll be somewhere kept safe, so,
Or maybe
you
an
know.
access code.
I mean, I think we should have, if it's going to be in their building, we need an agreement anyway. But when they say access at all reasonable hours, well, if we have a key, then it's just access, because we don't need to ask them. We're gonna go in and read the publicly owned meter that's in their building, it's on public water, right?
I think it's also really more for inspection than anything.
Right.
Which is important because it's
And
the
usually
entire community.
you provide notice before you do that, typically. You don't just go onto the premises.
We don't, but most meters are in a single-family home. We're not,
Right.
they're
No,
not.
but I'm saying
in a-
if you were doing an inspection or something like that.
Right, but in this case, it's not in someone's home, which is great, but it does obviously serve hundreds of people, so it'd be important that we have the ability to go in and inspect, so, okay.
I don't think that's a problem, is it?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I mean, they should
Probably a
just,
lot cheaper than building a building.
yeah, and I don't think it's necessary to make, I don't think, but to have an agreement that allows us access is necessary, but then just to let them know that we intend to hold a key as a part of this to gain access, and we'll let them know if we need to be on site.
I think that's a good idea.
That way, there's no issue with, you know,
Not being able to get in.
right, I mean, what if it's a health, safety, welfare issue? I mean, we may need to get in there and, you know.
But that's where our shut-off is too, right?
Oh, yeah, there's other ways
Sure, but I mean,
to stop the door opening.
right.
But
Right.
I don't think that, they've been extremely interested in this connection.
Yeah, I think it's great.
To the water system, so I don't think asking them for a key or some...
That's not gonna be
I'm saying a code because a lot of buildings now give codes, right?
I think that's even better, yeah.
Either way.
Right.
But, yeah, I don't think it's an issue at all to request that from the applicant.
I think it's great they're connecting, and all the folks that live there can enjoy the township's high-quality water.
I think it sounds like a lot like a motion, Sean.
I don't know, I had a few of them tonight. I think it's Chris's turn. He looks
I guess, well, no, I was just curious if this is a motion. No, I'll make a motion to approve Country Estates Mobile Home Park proposed connection to township water, conditioned on finalizing the easements per township engineer's satisfaction and providing a key or access code to the township. Support.
Can I make one comment? On Exhibit A, sorry, the second page, water meter location map, it says location of 3-inch water meter for county estates, not country estates. I just wanted to point that out.
Okay.
Top.
All right, well, we have a motion and support. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that concludes new business.
I have one comment.
Go for it.
On Resolution 2023-07, which is the line wastewater, it was just pointed out to me that the resolution itself stated that a roll call was taken on the motion.
Oh, we need a roll call for that?
No, we don't need it. That's just going to be stricken from the resolution, if everybody's okay with that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm okay with it. Everyone else?
Yep, I mean, we all said yes, so.
Okay. Any other comments before we close the room? All right, seeing none, I'm going to consider this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
All right.